Welcome to Berlin and welcome to Berlin Briefing. My name is Max Hofmann. Good to have you with us. We are recording this episode today on the 10th of April, 2026, which means we're 2 days away from very important elections in Hungary. Very important because Viktor Orbán, the prime minister, has been a thorn in the side of the European Union for 16 years. Only recently, he blocked 90 billion euros as a loan to Ukraine, which was considered vital by almost all other EU member states. And why is it so big? Well, Viktor Orbán seems to be on the losing track for Sunday. So we have much to discuss here. But what we can say already is, because of that loan and other things, the German government and Viktor Orbán have not been on the best of terms lately. So you could think that maybe the German government secretly is hoping for Orbán to lose. That's something we would like to discuss today with our guests, great guests here in the studio with me. Today is Kai-Olaf Lang. He's an expert of the SWP, as we call it in German, but in English, the official translation is German Institute for International and Security Affairs. And also with us today from Budapest, of course, many Hungary experts are in Budapest today, is Dora Diseri. She is the head of our very own Hungarian service. So thank you to both for being with us. But before I want to talk to you, we have a soundbite, because the question that I just asked is the German government actually secretly hoping for Viktor Orbán to lose? That's a question we asked a government spokesperson today. Listen to what he had to say.
In principle, we expect the parliamentary elections in Hungary to be held in line with democratic principles. Hungary, like all other EU member states, is obliged to under European treaties. But otherwise, we have no expectations regarding the outcome of democratic elections. We do not comment on that. Instead, we deal with those who have been elected as representatives in democratic elections by the respective electorates. That is politics.
So no comment, basically. Kai, do you buy it?
Of course, there are always two layers. There's the official one, and of course, every professional government would not like to be accused of interfering in elections by showing preferences. So every diplomat, of course, has to say that they will accept the outcome of democratic elections, that they will cooperate with every democratically legitimized
right,
government.
That's what they have to say. But
and then there is the other layer. Then there is
the
the de facto, the actual layer. And of course, in the last years, and I would dare to say that particularly since the beginning of Russia's invasion against Ukraine, Hungary has become increasingly a challenge for Germany, not only for Germany, in the context of foreign and security policy and in the context of the European Union. And if Viktor Orbán had to leave, this would at least open the opportunity for a more flexible, a more pragmatic partner in Budapest.
So basically what you're saying is, yes, secretly, probably the German government is hoping for Viktor Orbán to leave.
De facto, I think many would feel a great relief if there would be a change of government in Hungary. You also have to see that the political parties in power in Germany, Christian Democrats and Social Democrats, are not part of the political family to which Viktor Orbán and his Fidesz belong. So they're at odds in many questions, particularly regarding European affairs. Not in all, by the way, but in many. And Péter Magyar, the challenger of Viktor Orbán and his party TISA, belong to the European People's Party, by the way. So that's the grouping of which also the Christian Democrats in Germany are part of.
We'll talk a bit more about Péter Magyar later. Now I would like to ask you, Dor, you heard what we just discussed. What's the perception in Hungary? Is it us against the world? Germany is against us? What's your feeling?
Yeah, it depends who you are asking, of course, in which bubble the people or the asked person is living. Yeah, so the Hungarian society is really polarized still. And in this election campaign, we saw a very heated election campaign in the last months, and really this polarization went even further. And but about the EU, it's very interesting to see that the EU support is really big in Hungary. So the EU and the European Union is very important for the Hungarian people, and they want to be part of it. They value the European values as are really important for them, and they don't want to leave it. And it's really important to say that how Orbán is framing it, it's not against the EU. He is not talking against the EU, but he's talking against the Brussels bureaucrats. But you could also hear during the visit of the US Vice President J.D. Vance, he was also talking about the Brussels bureaucrats and the bureaucracy of Brussels, and this is a very very distinction.
Yeah.
When
the
they
bureaucrats
are talking about
and Brussels
exactly.
itself. Yeah, okay.
Exactly, and that is something. So it's really important to say that they are really working also with this distinction in also during the election campaign, and they were also if you are on the streets in Hungary, so out of in Budapest, that you see on the billboards the face of Ursula von der Leyen and Manfred Weber, which is really interesting to see that they are the enemies, so to say. They are the bureaucrats, and but not the EU itself. Orbán does not want to leave the EU. He always wanted to reform the EU. That's what he is always saying, and that's what he's also did in this election campaign.
We'll talk about the visit by the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance a bit more later. But Dora, give us a sense how you already talked about Ursula von der Leyen being up on the streets and Manfred Weber as well. Do you feel like the perception of Germany is tied in to that picture, or is there sort of a different sentiment about Germany among the people than about the EU?
Germany does not really play a role in the election campaign, I would say, this time. So due to this quiet, neutral position, what we saw since Merz became a chancellor. But of course, we also saw a meeting between Péter Magyar and Friedrich Merz in Munich during the security conference, which has been also picked up during the election campaign as a kind of support from the side of the German government. And it was actually a really important meeting for Péter Magyar because Orbán is doing an election campaign with a huge support of international politicians, just like the Patriots for Europe and visit of Marine Le Pen or Matteo Salvini or J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and so on. And Péter Magyar does not have this international support yet.
Right.
And that's why it was, for example, this meeting with the German chancellor or with the Croatian counterparts or with the Polish politicians very important for him to show that he is also able to build up such an international environment and an international support, just like Orbán already had.
Yeah.
So that's something which plays a big role. So this meeting, and also we should not forget that Merz did not have any bilateral meetings with Orbán since he became a chancellor of Germany.
So implicit support, at least that's how it's interpreted in Hungary, as I understand. Of course, always easier for the incumbent, Kai, to have those international meetings and to have that international stature if you already have the office. Dora just told us Germany doesn't play a huge role right now in the campaign in Hungary. But if we just go back 2 years, That's when Viktor Orbán, in an interview, said, Germany no longer smells the same as it used to. He used that to criticize, or that description to criticize Germany's immigration policies, and suggested that Germany is no longer the nation of order and hardworking people. I don't know if you remember that when he said that, but it seems like he is defining what he stands for in opposition to what Germany stands for. Would you agree with that?
I would say that Viktor Orbán, in a way, likes Germany.
That comes as a surprise.
The old traditional Germany. That's as compared, and I'm interested in Central Europe as a whole. And if you look, for example, to Poland and Jarosław Kaczynski, there is a deeply ingrained aversion against Germany, which is historically grown. I think in the Hungarian case, or in the case of the Hungarian national conservatives and Viktor Orbán, they have a rather positive attitude towards Germany. There are strong economic bonds. Most German investors are welcome and feel very good in Hungary.
The car industry as well.
And there is still, I call it, a founding myth of the new German-Hungarian relations in 1989, when Hungary opened the fence and was a place where sort of German reunification was anticipated because Germany's from the western part and from the eastern part met there, and so on and so forth. And Viktor Orbán always, for a long time, had very strong ties to German politicians, and he still has. Originally, he was a liberal. He was at the funeral of Graf Lambsdorff, one of the emblematic figures of the German liberals, of the FDP. He had good relations with Helmut Kohl. He visited him before Kohl died. Even with Angela Merkel, even he strongly disagreed with her migration policies. And now, when he joined ranks with so-called nationalists and all over and populists in Europe, he has close ties with AfD and with Mrs. Weidel. So I think he is very open to Germany, but he wants to have the traditional Germany, built on a strong economy, and a Germany which should not go liberal and green in a way. That's what he heavily criticizes. So I think that's the general kind of habitus and posture of Orbán and Fidesz towards Germany. And by the way, if you like someone and he criticizes you, and Orbán has been criticized by German politicians for questions regarding rule of law and migration policies, then you're particularly frustrated in a way.
Dora, would you agree with that assessment? Is that the main problem that Orbán has with Germany?
Yeah. So I can understand. So what I would add also. So yes, these connections, for example, to the Bavarian CSU, it's very important for Orbán. So for example, so they used to have big meetings, for example, with Horst Seehofer. It was very important for him. And yes, so that criticizing the immigration and also this multicultural life of Berlin or of Germany, it's really at the heart, for example, of the government's propaganda, that everything, it doesn't matter what's happening in Germany is a kind of crime or something which could really state that that immigration is dangerous for Europe. Then they really use it and put it also into the headlines, and they are using it as a kind of statement and in the media.
And how is, if I may just go in there, Dora, for a second, how is Péter Magyar, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, in Hungarian, I'm never quite sure.
Magyar.
How is he different in that respect when it comes to Germany from Viktor Orbán? Do you see a distinct difference?
Yes, so he already has actually a person who is set to be the next foreign minister of Hungary, so to say, and she is Anita Orbán, and the name is a coincidence that she's also an Orbán. It doesn't have any connections to another Orbán.
So not part of the family.
No, not part of the family. But he used to be actually a Fidesz candidate. So he used to be a Fidesz candidate, and she left the party, and now he is leading the foreign policies within the TISA party. And she said that for her would be one of the main goals to reestablish the relationships with the EU, with Germany, and with Poland. So these are the three main points for her. And this also shows what they want to achieve. So they really want to reset the relationships with the European Union, so with Brussels, with Berlin, with Germany, and with Warsaw, so with Poland, which really, so I would say, so the German relationship was really a kind of, it's now somehow frozen for us. So it was not really intense in the last years and months, and they want to rearrange it. Which is
was
really
that was that somehow visible in the campaign, or was it an important topic for the opposition?
For the statements of Anita Orbán, yes. For Péter Magyar is much more in his messages. It's much more framed as like, we don't want. It's not Russia. It's not Asia. It's Hungary. That's the main message what he's giving, and this also shows the direction, the back to the Western European ties, back to the Western European partnerships, and to reconsider the ties to Russia, to Asia, and to the South Korean or the Chinese investors who are already here. Because, of course, so Orbán had really cultivated ties not only to Russia, but to Beijing and to other Asian countries, and also building up a kind of economic partnership with those, for example, building battery factories in Hungary.
Right.
It is also a huge business now in Hungary, and there will be also huge scandals about these factories, which also Péter Magyar used in his campaign, because they really released toxic materials into the environment and also into the environment of the factories. There were huge scandals. They used it. They released also video footage on it, so how they use those toxic materials, for example, and and so to sum it up, really, so to reset those relationships to EU, Germany, and Poland, it's really a main goal for Péter Magyar and for her, for the foreign policies.
Understood. Thank you, Dora. Kai just raised his hand. I assume you want to say something?
I think there's just one point we should mention when we are talking about German-Hungarian relations. But I agree with everything what has been said. The single most divisive issue we have at the moment is, of course, the Ukraine dossier. Everything related to the war, relations with Russia, security policy is a big problem in bilateral relations in a sort of European context. All the other questions we had in the last years, migration, I mean, the wind has changed in Europe, and Viktor Orbán says, I was right, and the others are following. Germany also has not switched to the course of Viktor Orbán 1-to-1, but has followed a more kind of hawkish, more security-oriented line when it comes to migration. Rule of law was always also something which has caused disputes, but more or less the front line is clear here. Also, the EU, the heavy criticism of EU elites and EU policies coming from Budapest is something which Berlin knows, and both sides know where they stand. But in regarding the war and the vetoes which have been blocking.
For example,
you mentioned the 19 billion loan, but also accession talks of Ukraine to the European Union. This is something where Hungary is seen as a factor heavily complicating the capability to act of the European Union, of the community, and that in times where the bloc is under pressure from different sides.
So there definitely there are very different stances on this. I think we all agree on that. Became very clear, especially for that 90 billion euro loan at the last EU summit, when also the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz voiced his displeasure very strongly about this happening. But of course, Viktor Orbán still has very powerful allies at the moment. And you mentioned it earlier, Dora, and now it's time to listen to a soundbite by the US Vice President J.D. Vance, who openly supported Orbán on this visit. Let's have a listen.
We admire you, and we want you to make a decision about your future with no outside forces pressuring you or telling you what to do. I'm not telling you exactly who to vote for. But what I am telling you is that the bureaucrats in Brussels, those people should not be listened to. Listen to your hearts, listen to your souls, and listen to the sovereignty of the Hungarian people. Will you stand against the bureaucrats in Brussels? Will you stand for sovereignty and democracy? Will you stand for Western civilization? Will you stand for freedom, for truth, and for the God of our fathers? Then, my friends, go to the polls on the weekend, stand with Viktor Orbán, because he stands for you and he stands for all these things. God bless Hungary and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Yeah, almost like a U.S. town hall. I remember this from when I was as a U.S. correspondent some years back. Dora, does this kind of politics show, does what J.D. Vance says, does that resonate with the Hungarian people?
I would say that it's nothing new for the Hungarian people. So actually the support of US President Donald Trump is there for a very long time. And we see this very strong connection, this friendship. So it's really a kind of friendship between Orbán and Trump that we saw in the last few years. That it's something which was always present, was always really well presented as well. So in many different meetings, video messages, and so on. And it's nothing new. So
but does it work? I mean, does it really work in favor of Orbán?
I would say that it won't bring new votes for Orbán now.
It will not,
because it's. No,
okay.
It will not, because it's something which is already there for many years in Hungary. So who really cares of support, international support, is already there within the Fidesz voters circles, and it doesn't. It's something which is. Something which is said a kind of show element, of course. So it was a very big theater around it, and it was very well presented everywhere. But I don't think that it really counts at the end when the Hungarians are going to the polls.
All right. Of course, what we had in there was also the element Dora mentioned earlier, that J.D. Vance didn't blame Brussels itself, but the Brussels bureaucracy. Blaming the EU or the bureaucracy in allegedly interfering in the Hungarian election. And that question was also put to Sebastian Hille, who you saw earlier, the spokesperson of the German government, what he had to say about that. Listen to it.
I'd just like to point out, since, as I said, Mr. Vance was complaining about alleged EU interference in Hungary, that it is a fact that the US Vice President was in Hungary just a few days before parliamentary elections there. This fact alone already shows, or speaks for itself, who is interfering in what.
Yeah, Kai, it kind of seems that way, you know. Vance being on the ground, saying that the EU is interfering, or the Brussels bureaucracy, but himself obviously full-heartedly supporting Viktor Orbán. What did you think when you saw this?
It is clear that there is a sort of special relationship between Viktor Orbán and Donald Trump, between the national conservatives in Hungary and the MAGA camp in the United States. I think from the US point of view, Hungary is a sort of role model and a hub for what to do if you can govern in a country.
A blueprint.
A blueprint and a role model, so to say, for transforming the country in a traditionalist, conservative way. But I agree to with what Dora said. I think this was not a game changer. If Trump himself had appeared in Hungary, but even there, I would say Hungary is not Poland, where you have these traditional strong bonds with the US and the strong admiration. And this is maybe about mobilizing the faithful anyway. But indeed, there is an asymmetry in activating like-minded friends. When you look at the two camps. Magyar also could have invited representatives of the European People Party to Hungary. He didn't do it because he did not want to confirm the narrative that he is a sort of agent of other interests. So he was very, very cautious about that. He just said the decisions for Hungary have to be made in Hungary, not in Moscow, not in Beijing, nor in Washington. At the same time, what I found interesting, if you look a little bit closer also at J.D. Vance's visit, to some extent he also tried to be correct, and he said that the U.S. administration would cooperate with every Hungarian government because they love the Hungarians. So I think that was not so easy for Fidesz and Viktor Orbán. Mm-hmm. And as a response, or an indirect response to that, Magyar declared that he would be happy to invite President Trump and the Vice President to Hungary in autumn this year, when you will have an anniversary of the Hungarian Revolution in 1956.
If we strip away all the show part and all that, and the obvious attempt to influence the election, do you think that J.D. Vance has a point, meaning that there is too much interference from Brussels?
I think there is no direct interference from Brussels. Of course, the Hungarian government has a problem with frozen EU funds, more than 20 billion euros. But this is due to rules which were not kept, rules which are also important to ensure transparency in using EU money, in other way to counteract to corrupt practices and so on. So the EU was rather at a very low profile in order not to feed in the narrative you had from the government side. Of course, there is basically a situation where both sides accuse each other that they use for influence. So Tisza, Magyar, the opposition, say that the Russians have been interfering, that there was a strange case of an almost explosion of a pipeline in Serbia where explosive material was found. And of course the whole US story. On the other hand, the government camp says there were these wiretaped phone calls between the Hungarian foreign minister and the Russian foreign minister. That has to be the work of secret services of other countries which want a change of government. So both sides are basically accusing each other of having support from abroad. I think at the end it will not be decisive for the result of the elections.
I mean, the polls in Hungary are notoriously unreliable, but the polls so far, and that's just a heads up if you haven't been following this very closely, are very much in favor of Péter Magyar, who is the opposition leader. Some even see him winning a 2/3 majority. That remains to be seen, of course. But let's just, for the sake of it, Dora, what happens if Orbán wins? But is it safe to say nothing changes?
I would say that will change something. So he has to face a big opposition party in the parliament, definitely, which is strongest than he saw ever before. So it will be there will be big fights, I think. So it's of course a big question whether then if Orbán wins, whether they could have a constitutional majority again, and if they won't have it, then they will have big fights within the parliament with Tisza party. And of course, on the other side, if Tisza wins, it's the same question whether they would have the constitutional majority and how they would have their fights with the Fidesz party within the parliament. So ruling the country won't be easy, I think, in both cases. So it's, of course, happened a lot in the last 16 years, which built up a system in favor of Fidesz. So we have, of course, a captured state here on many different levels. And even if Tisza wins, it will be very difficult to lead this country with those captured public institutions and so on.
That's exactly the question I wanted to ask. Kai, what happens if Péter Magyar wins?
No, in terms of foreign policy, he will certainly try to normalize relations with the European Union, whatever it means. That means, I think, basically he wants to do reforms in the realm of rule of law and governance, which would open the access to the frozen money. That will be not so easy because, for example, if he needs a constitutional majority to change certain laws in order to restore rule of law or to do the necessary change the EU requires, what will be the position of the European Commission? So there cannot be a situation where they give money for nothing, just for good declaration, because this would feed in the line of argumentation of Fidesz and other national conservatives in the European Union said that was just a political campaign. So I think he will present a sort of action plan and do some things like erect an anti-corruption office and so on and so forth. So, and then I think he would lift the vetoes, but he will not do a U-turn in politics vis-à-vis Ukraine. He knows what the mood in the country is, so he will not be a pro-Ukraine warrior. Also in issues like migration and other European questions, there will be a lot of continuity even in his policies. So domestically, I think it will maybe the possible victory will be the easiest part of the whole exercise, okay. Because what are the decisive issues in the elections? It's inflation,
like everywhere.
It's healthcare. It's the educational system. And so bread and butter issues, which are not easy to solve. I don't know any single country, maybe in Europe, at least in Central Eastern Europe, where you have a well-functioning healthcare system. So this will be very difficult in times where the public budget is put under strain, and where there will be a very strong and vital opposition, plus a couple of institutional restraints for this new government. And of course, this will be a moment of relaunch and of hope.
Dora, Kai, thank you very much for being with us today. We'll see how it plays out on Sunday. That's when the elections take place. And as we hear, the elections might be the easiest part, and the harder part comes after, as Kai put it. Thank you very much for listening and watching wherever you are, and hope to see you again soon. Next episode of Berlin Briefing.